Israeli media is now reporting the ship attempting to deliver aid to Gaza has arrived in the port of Ashdod. Israeli forces had boarded the Freedom Flotilla ship, the Madeleine, earlier in the day, with the activists on board, including Greta Thunberg, expected to return home. A Middle East correspondent, Matt Doran, is in Jerusalem and he joins me now. Matthew, what's the latest now with the Madeleine and its occupants? Where are they at the moment?
Yeah, Girish, good evening. We had been waiting for that ship to arrive at Ashdod port, which is north of Gaza, sort of halfway between Tel Aviv and Gaza. It is not only a big cargo port, but also a naval base. And it was a seemingly very slow journey from where the Madeleine was intercepted by Israeli forces in the Mediterranean Sea in the early hours of this morning local time. Drones being the first signal to the crew there that Israeli forces were preparing to board, flashing lights and spraying a mystery white substance which appears to have burnt the eyes of some of the crew who were still on board at the time before Israeli forces boarded the ship, took control of it and escorted the crew off of the Madeleine and onto Israeli vessels there. The Freedom Flotilla says that this interception happened in international waters, and that is why there is significant uproar about this incident. Yes, these individuals, the 12 international crew of the Madeleine, are being taken to Ashdod port, where they will be handed over to Israeli authorities and then deported from there. We don't know how long that process will take. A lot of it will rest on how quickly they can be put on flights at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport. There aren't necessarily as many direct flights in and out of Tel Aviv as there are in times of relative peace in this part of the world. So that process may not be immediate, but certainly the Israeli authorities have signalled that that is the approach going forward.
And what's been the reaction both in Israel and further abroad to that raid on the Madeleine?
Well, let's start here in Israel. The Israeli government has been very bullish in its response to what's happened in the early hours of this morning. The Foreign Ministry and the Defence Minister, Israel Katz, putting out very strongly worded statements about this campaign. Israel Katz saying that he is going to ensure that the 12 members of the crew are forced to watch a video of Hamas's attacks on October 7, 2023 against Israel, something which I think is worth us noting because the Israeli authorities are criticising this campaign from the Madeleine and from the Freedom Flotilla as something which is more of theatre rather than substance, yet it is pursuing its own interesting form of stagecraft there in forcing the crew to watch that video. We have also heard criticism so far from further afield from the Turkish government, saying that this interception in international waters is a heinous crime of the Netanyahu government, and that does seem to be some sort of echoing the sentiments of some other people around the world. We heard from Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur for the Palestinian territories, making a similar comment there. We are also hearing today from lawyers representing the crew who, as well as picking up on that issue of the interception happening in international waters in the Mediterranean off the coast of Egypt, well before Israel's sort of territory there, they are also saying that Israel is effectively making this more of a problem than it is. They are arresting people in international waters. They are then bringing those individuals into Israeli territory to then deport them, that they wouldn't have to be deported if they weren't actually brought into Israeli territory. So there may well be some legal arguments to occur in the near future as well.
Matt, the whole point of this particular voyage was to raise awareness of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Has it achieved that aim?
Well, Girish, it certainly highlighted the strict controls and restrictions that Israel enforces on the Gaza Strip in terms of what is able to go in and indeed go out. This naval blockade of Gaza is not new. It's been in force since the late 2000s, and there have been a number of inquiries into this situation, particularly following the attack by Israeli forces on a Turkish-flagged ship back in 2010, which was also trying to break that blockade and deliver aid to Gaza. One UN investigation finding that the blockade was illegal, another saying that it did have legal standing from a security perspective there. That is, of course, a very different time and context to what we are seeing right now with this ongoing war in Gaza following those deadly attacks by Hamas on October 7, 2023. More than 54,000 Palestinians being killed in the more than 18 months of that war since. And beyond that, this incredibly dire humanitarian situation developing in Gaza with aid being severely restricted going into the territory. The crew, for its part, and let's point out Greta Thunberg here, probably the most high profile of the activists on board, she was saying yesterday when it became clear that Israeli forces were preparing to intercept this vessel that this mission is not about the Madeleine, it is not about the crew, it is about highlighting that situation facing the Palestinian people, and certainly they've been able to get a bit of attention for that today.
And still in Gaza itself, Matt, the IDF is saying that it has retrieved the bodies of senior Hamas figures beneath a hospital in the south and even gave a tour to some journalists. So what was the IDF trying to show here?
This is the European hospital in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, the site of a deadly strike by Israeli forces a couple of weeks ago after the IDF claimed that a series of underground tunnel networks had been built underneath the facility. It hit that area with significant ferocity, with some so-called bunker-busting bombs trying to break into those underground tunnels, saying at the time that it believed Mohammed Sinwar, the Hamas military leader, was among those in that tunnel network. Now, Israel has been saying for weeks now it believed it was likely Mohammed Sinwar had been killed, that it was probable Mohammed Sinwar had been killed. It is now at the stage where it is confirming his death after retrieving that body there. And this tour that the IDF put on for some journalists, and I must stress the ABC was not part of this tour of Gaza. These are highly orchestrated media events controlled by the IDF where they take journalists into a certain part of Gaza. Journalists are not allowed to speak to members of the public. They are only shown and directed towards things that the IDF want people to see. But the IDF taking journalists into those tunnels to show that indeed they do exist, and further criticising Hamas for building that sort of infrastructure underneath a medical facility. Back when that strike happened a couple of weeks ago, there were serious concerns around the fact that it had happened, that dozens had been killed, according to local health authorities, among them civilians, that a hospital should be protected, but Israel constantly saying that international law protections expire when Hamas, as an example there, is using those facilities to shield its fighters. It is further evidence of what Israel says is Hamas's use of humanitarian areas to launch its operations, and further evidence of what the Palestinian community says is the dismantling of Gaza's already crippled health system. Girish?
Okay, Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran, thank you so much.